Kính thưa quý vị khán thính giả của chương trình PhoBolsaTV, ngay trước buổi họp báo của ông Nguyễn Thanh Tú, chúng tôi thấy có mặt ký giả AC Thompson ở trong phòng họp báo ngay ở thành phố San Jose. Tranh thủ thời giờ trước buổi họp báo, chúng tôi sẽ hỏi đôi chút với ký giả AC Thompson. Hi, can you tell us a little bit about the updates after the film and everything after that, please?
Yeah, since the film came out, I mean, I think the first thing that happened was there was a lot of negative reaction towards the film, and people that were involved with the film crew, some of them got death threats, two got threats. And then I think the mood sort of changed, and as Tu was talking more about what had happened and doing his research, I think that a lot of people became more receptive to the ideas that were in the film. I think the most important thing that's happened since the film aired is that, from what I can tell, Tu has continued to do a lot of research, do a lot of his own investigation, and sort of look into the whole structure around the front at that time in the 80s, and what has come out of the front, the Mặt Trận, and what they're doing today. And so I think those are like sort of the most important things. Is he picked up what his father was doing as an investigative reporter and sort of became a modern blogger reporter.
You said that threat to some people.
Right.
Who is this came from? Do you know?
It's not clear, but people who were on our crew, associate producer, myself, others got threats, and so those came on Facebook and the email and so forth.
The movie got nominated for the award, but I didn't get it. But can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so it was nominated for an Emmy for Best National Documentary. Our friend's film actually got the award for a film called My Brother's Bomber, but it was a big recognition, I think, just to be one of the 5 films that was a finalist for the Emmys.
I've just talked to one person right in the community here in San Jose, Councilman Thompson, and regarding your movie, your film, he said you are using the story to make the fame for yourself. What can you tell?
Yeah, you know, here's the real truth, right? Is that from the beginning, when we were conceptualizing the film, I didn't want to be in it. And when I talked to the bosses at Frontline, they said, no, you have to be in it. And actually, that was something I tried to get out of, because that's not my preferred thing. I would rather be off camera and in the background. But they felt like that was the only way that it would work. Here's the thing, is that for me, it was an important story that needed to be told. And the only thing that matters to me about the story is getting the word out there about what happened to these journalists, about the failure of the government to arrest anybody in connection with those deaths, and about the failure of basically the mainstream and English language media to pay as much attention to those cases as they should have. For me, like there was no fame bump for me at all. It was 2 years of a lot of work, then getting threats, then not a ton of interest, unfortunately, from the English language and mainstream media. So in that way, for me, one of the main things I wanted to do was generate interest in that world and say, hey, this is a story that you all have ignored and you've forgotten. And in some ways, so I would say the film was a failure in some ways, because it didn't generate enough interest with the English language media. But in terms of giving me any fame, I would say it really hasn't done much in that regard, you know.
It looks like right now for two is two separate investigations. One is regarding his father's death,
right,
and the second one is regarding the financial of the organization Vietnam.
Right.
Is that what you think that should be the way?
Yeah, that's my understanding, is that he's really interested in sort of the finances behind Viet Thanh and what's and their corporate arrangement and what they're doing with their money today, and then also trying to cultivate sources who know about what happened to his father and can finally explain to the world what happened to his father and the other journalists who were killed during that time period.
It looks like Tu is the one who lead the investigations now. Regarding that topic, regarding that subject, regarding that film, you and your company, PhoBolsaTV, having to do anything with that going forward?
Are we going to continue to report on the subject? I think we're going to come back to it eventually, and I think there's some developments, hopefully, that we'll be able to report on before too long. At the moment, my main focus is covering hate crimes and racial and ethnic violence in the current time, so that's my main focus. But I'm constantly hearing about what's developed on this story, and when the moment is right, we're absolutely going to return to the story and start investigating again.
So at the moment, do you have anything to do with two investigations now, like working with each other?
He and I talk to each other. You know, he does his own thing. He tells me this is what I'm reporting on, this is what I'm looking at, and I listen to what he's saying and give him advice from time to time. And hey, perhaps you would look at this or that, from as having worked in this field for a long time. But he's doing his own thing.
Tu recently get a lawsuit from Vietnam party. Your company or yourself get anything or expecting any lawsuit?
No, we haven't been served with any papers, and we're not expecting to be served with any papers for a lawsuit. For the film and our reporting, it went through two different sets of fact checkers and two different sets of lawyers. And so we feel like everything that's presented in the film is absolutely factual, absolutely accurate, and that there's no grounds to litigate anything there.
Want it or not, you are the one of the key person to reopen this subject to the community and the world. What can you tell Vietnamese people living not only in San Jose, not only in the U.S., but everywhere, including Vietnam?
What can I tell them about the case? I mean, I think there's a lot to think about the case, right? So the first thing is that there was a wave of violence in the Vietnamese American community from about 1981 to 1990. And the first thing is that not enough attention has ever been paid to that wave of violence, and not enough energy in terms of government resources and government attention has ever been paid to it. That's the first thing to talk about. I think the next thing to talk about is that the evidence, when you look at it over and over again, suggests that these were political assassinations, political violence, and that the violence was coming from members of the front or people in the orbit of the front. I think all of the evidence leads there. We read through thousands and thousands of pages of FBI files and interviewed more than 100 people. And over again, that's where the evidence led. It didn't lead in other directions. That's where it led. And I think the main thing to ask at this point is who within that circle might have been involved directly in these assassinations. For example, when I talk about evidence, there was a gentleman who was an early member of the front who went to Thailand with the group early on, who later left the group because he felt like it wasn't really going to be successful as a military effort. He told the FBI when he came back to the U.S., hey, members of the group, Wang Koming, tried to have me assassinated. And by the way, Wang Koming was responsible for assassinating these journalists in the United States. This is what he told the FBI. This is in the FBI files. This is from one of the very first members of the group who was very directly involved with the top leadership. So when you see these kind of things over and over again, and they're not hearsay, this is his firsthand experience. They tried to have me killed. And that was confirmed to me by other former members of the group that it went down like that. That suggests to me that the people responsible for these assassinations, both of members of the group and critics of the group from the journalistic community, that it was the front behind them.
As I understand, this film initiated by you meeting some Vietnamese filmmaker, and then that person suggests you to do the film.
Well, what happened was I was reporting on the assassination of Chauncey Bailey, who was killed in 2007. He was an African-American journalist in Oakland. And when I was doing that, I met Tony Wen, filmmaker, and he had done a film about one of these killings. And he said, hey, you know, what happened to Chauncey Bailey, killed in the streets because of his journalism, happened in the Vietnamese community over and over again. And outside of the Vietnamese community, nobody knows about these stories. And he told me that. He finished his film, and years later, I thought it had stuck with me that the world had forgotten about these cases. The world had forgotten about the journalism these people were doing. The world the government had never bothered to solve these cases. And so I came to Tony and I said, hey, you know, I'd be interested in looking into those stories again. And so he shared his research with me. He helped consult on the film and helped arrange some of the interviews. But yeah, that was the nexus of the film.
Some people say that that person is a communist sympathizer. What do you think?
You know, I think you have to ask Tony about that. I think Tony's motivation in doing the film is purely what I just articulated, that he feels like this is a story of unequal justice, that if white reporters for the English language media had been killed over and over again, that the world would have noticed, the government would have responded effectively, arrests would have been made, and people would have gone to jail. And I think that's what Tony has conveyed to me over and over again, that for him, this is a story about being an Asian American man, being a refugee, and feeling like there's a different level of justice for his community as opposed to the rest of the journalistic community and other ethnic communities.
Besides people who are supporting two investigations, there are also quite a few people who think that his investigations go to the point that it's hurting Viet Thanh, at the same time helping the communist government back in Vietnam. Do you hear about that at all, and what do you think?
You know, I don't know about that. That's a big question. I think the reality is, right, there can be facts that can seem to be flattering to the Vietnamese government, but those could just be the facts. For example, you can look at this story and look at what happened in America during the 80s, and that's something that the communist government in Vietnam would love to talk about and say, hey, look, America is a messed up place. It's not respectful of the immigrant population. It didn't care about these people. You know, and that's something that they would love to talk about. It's great propaganda, right? But on the other hand, it's just true. That is that is the facts are the facts. As far as Thu's investigation aiding the communist government, I mean, I think the communist government is a lot bigger than anything Thu is going to do, and has been in power a lot longer. Any reporting and investigation he does is really not going to have a material effect on the government. I think he's aware that it's a remarkably repressive government that chased his family from the country, and I think his goal here is simply to get to the truth about what happened with his father.
Last question: what will make you and ProPublica participate in this subject again in the future?
Well, here's the thing. We're still interested in any tips, any information people have, any leads, any eyewitness accounts. We're still absolutely interested in all of that. So anybody that has any information about any of these crimes, we would love for you to reach out to us, reach out to the authorities, and we are absolutely open to coming back to the story and really diving in again.
Thank you very much for your sharing.
Thanks a lot.